action.
Hi everyone, welcome to Voicing Your Talent with me, Jacquelyn Liz, where I will be interviewing the giants in this crazy industry we call voice acting. Get to know them a little more and their passion for the art of voice acting.
Hello, today on Voicing Your Talent we have Renae Jacobs.
Hello, how are you, darling?
You have voiced many incredible characters within amazing projects such as Moon Dreamers, but you are best known for your character April O'Neil in the original TV series Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When did you know you wanted to become a voice actor?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I knew from a very early age, I think I was about 6 or 7, that I wanted to be an actor. I had seen a musical called The Most Happy Fella. It was playing in Okemos in Michigan, where I grew up. And the minute the lights went down and the curtain went up, I was hooked. And East Lansing, Michigan, where I grew up, is a very small town, even though it's the capital, but it's home to one of the most fabulous colleges, Michigan State University. They had a children's television program, and the woman who produced it and starred in it offered classes to children on puppetry. So my mom discovered that I was doing voices down in the basement entertaining myself, and she signed me up for one of these classes where they taught us how to make puppets out of stuffed animals and then how to do different voices. And obviously she must have liked what I did, because she asked me to come on the show, and I did characters on that show when I was about 7 years old, started there. And then we would do shows for children, kind of going from different preschools and grade schools and doing puppet shows and also showing them how to do this. So I started really young, and it just grabbed me. I loved it. So that's how I started.
That's really cool. And you mentioned, was it your mother that introduced you to voice acting and stuff like that?
Well, what actually happened was my father had been in a bowling league and had won a huge set of Disney records and a record player. And in those days, the records they had beautiful covers that were animated, and you'd open them up and there would be the entire script of the recording of, say, Cinderella or all the different shows. I can't even remember, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and all of the Disney shows, Winnie the Pooh. So they set this record player up and all the albums down in the basement, thinking they'd get rid of me. And I would set up all my stuffed animals on the couch and mimic and perform all of the recordings. So my mom came downstairs one day and thought there were a whole bunch of people down in our basement, but it was me doing voices. So that's kind of how she discovered what I was doing down there, and then found an avenue for me. She talked to me about it, and I loved it, and she said, there's actually people who do this for a living, so would you like to learn about it? And I was all for it at 7 years old.
That's really cool. That's exactly how I started, but I was 16 when I started into.
So what did you do? What did you do to start?
So the way I started, I saw a little casting. So my story of this, of the voice acting. The way I started is I'm huge into anime, stuff like that, Disney, and I saw this little free stuff that kids are making, up and coming creators and stuff like that for free, and I just decided, and I saw a little button that said casting call, and also I did hear in certain animes and certain Disney shows, and I'm like, that voice sounds really familiar, and I would look up who the voice was, and I just saw a little button that said casting calls, and sure enough, I tried a voice through my cell phone, recorded it through my cell phone, sent it, and then my mom said, can I hear that again? And I said, I guess. So that was the I guess. So I showed her, and she goes, she's really good because I can do like maybe an impression of Harley Quinn and like a bunch of other impressions of like anime, Disney, and stuff like that. So that's how I originally started, and I got training from my coach, and now I'm here. So
Very nice. So your mom helped you too.
Yeah. How does a voiceover artist land an amazing role such as April O'Neil? What was the process you went through getting casted for that role?
Oh, that's a very good question. And, you know, it really shows you that it's a little bit luck of the draw. You know, I'm not the first person who will say it, but they say luck is preparation meeting opportunity. And that's exactly what it is. You have to be prepared. You have to be ready. You have to be willing to walk through that door, and then there's a bit of luck involved. So I was called by my agent and said there's this audition for a new TV show called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I went, excuse me? You know, it was a mouthful back then. Now we can all say it very quickly. And so I went to the recording studio out in the valley where there were probably, 100 other women sitting there waiting to go in and record. And Stu Rosen was the director at the time. So he brought me in and he directed me and had me try it different ways. And then I left. And my agent called me maybe a week later and said, you got the part. So, okay, I got the part. So one of the first opportunities we had to record, we rehearsed it, and then the director took me aside and said, I didn't even want you to do this part, but I played all the other auditions, and they didn't like any of them. And then you were the last one. So I said, well, I have one more, and I'll play it, but I don't think she's April. And they played it, and they said, that's April. So he wasn't even going to play my audition for them. But because he had played all of them, and they didn't care for any of them, I was lucky. So preparation, meeting opportunity is luck. So that's how I got the part.
He didn't play one of the parts?
Yeah, he did record at least one voice. I don't remember, it was very early on. And Stu was I knew him personally outside of the recording studio, and I really liked him. He was really nice to me outside of the recording studio. Inside the recording studio was another story. Now, as an actor, you don't know the pressures of what's going on inside the booth with the people who are directing. So all you know is your reality on the other side of the glass or the other side of the microphone. And I assure you, I didn't know it then, but I know it now. There was a lot of pressure being put on Stu and on Sue Blue, who took over from Stu. It was stressful in the booth, but they never let us in on that. So whatever we were feeling, actors and, most people, but especially actors, take things very personally. It's so interesting. You think you're the only insecure person. But now we're doing all these Comic-Cons, and you get to sit with the great voiceover actors like, of course, Rob Paulson, Cam Clark, Barry Gordon, Townsend Coleman, Peter Renaday, my buddies. But you get to sit with Michael Bell and the great Jim Cummings, and you realize that they are just as insecure as you are. And, and nobody talked to each other about it. We all kind of came in and did our work and tried to do the best we could and kept our heads down, and I think if we had had the opportunity to talk to each other on a personal level, it could have made life a lot easier for everybody, because we all thought, that person's got it all together. But that other person sitting next to you, who's now, world famous for what they do, they were just as insecure and feeling like they weren't good as you felt. So with Stu, you get into the recording booth, and it was difficult. He was critical. I think you get, what do they say? You get a lot more bees with honey than with vinegar. Being nice, being supportive is a lot better for the actor than being critical. But you never know what's going on inside the other person's head. You know, maybe they've got the idea that they could do it better. That's what you know, as an actor, that's what you think. But, you know, you also have to look on the bright side or the positive side and say, they may be getting pressures from the producers to do something that they may not be able to explain to you. So there's a lot of that there was a lot of that going on. I don't know what the question was anymore.
That was just like my personal question, to be honest. How would you describe the character of April O'Neil?
You know, I loved all the different characters that I've done throughout my life, but most of them were little creatures, little fairies, little, you know, imaginary fantasy creatures. So they were all very silly, and they didn't, you know, have a lot in their head, and they didn't impart anything important except, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And, you know, things like that. April O'Neil was a real person. You know, she didn't have wings, and she didn't throw pixie dust, and she wasn't a flower. She was a person, and not only that, but she was a professional person. She wasn't married. She didn't have children. She wasn't a nurse. She wasn't a teacher. Not that the 80s were that long ago, but, you know, women have really taken on the world and come into their own since then. And I think April helped usher in that kind of attitude for a lot of the girls watching Ninja Turtles. You know, there are a lot of guys that watch Turtles. But the girls who were watching, they really related to April and were inspired by April. I've had so many people come up to me at Comic-Cons and say, you know, if not for you, I wouldn't have survived my childhood. I was the only girl in a house full of boys, and we watched Ninja Turtles, and April gave me the courage and the guts and the gumption to stand up to my brothers or to want to be something, you know, go into the military, go to law school, go be a journalist. So the character of April just took on a different kind of life than all those other characters. And I'm really proud to have been able to do that. And, you know, most of us, all of us in the Ninja Turtle cast, we had no idea the kind of effect we would have. We had no idea it would run this long and continue to run, and there'd be so many iterations. We were doing a job, and it was fun, and it was different, but, you know, we are all very, very appreciative of the longevity and the effect that this particular show had on so many people, getting them through tough times. It was magic. It was real magic, and April was right up there with the ability to help people through some bad times and influence and inspire, and I'm thrilled for that.
Even I'm a little choked up right now, because that's exactly how I feel with when I voice my characters and all this other stuff. Like I said, that's exactly how I feel when I voice a character and they're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly, like they feel what you said before about the girl relates to everyone else, every other girl.
Right. I think anime has stronger characters than a lot of the kids' shows that we were doing and may be doing, you know, now. But yeah, it's pretty cool to have strong female characters and not, you know, just little fairies and food and flower items.
In 2014, you came full circle within the world of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by playing the role
you got to say that fast 3 times.
of Miss O'Neil in the revision Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series titled Very Secrets. What was it like coming back to play the role of Mrs. O'Neil?
It was amazing. It was amazing to be able to come back to the Ninja Turtles in a different iteration so many years later. I was directed by the great Andrea Romano, who really is, I think, one of the finest voiceover directors there has been. And it was just magnificent to be able to do that and embody April O'Neil's mom, who'd been missing for so long, with the hope that she wasn't missing. The difference was interesting, though. When we began doing Ninja Turtles and throughout the whole 9 years of recording, we recorded together. So it was the producers and the director in the booth behind the glass, and then all of us in a recording studio with music stands and our scripts, and we would rehearse it, then we'd take a break, and then we'd record it. And the magic of our show was the interaction between the actors. So many of the lines that were written were not what actually was put into the show. So much was ad-libbed, and the intonations and the back and forth and camaraderie was developed in the studio. And this time around, when I did the Nickelodeon show, it was just me in the booth, and I had to come back a few times because we recorded it first. Then they laid it down and did some basic animation, and then I recorded some more. And then they brought in the final animation, and then I recorded some more. But it was just me. So the thing was that the mother of April O'Neil was a robotic character. It wasn't her real mother. And so having that disjointed experience without the actors being there, made it a little easier to actually play that character because she wasn't real. But not having the actors in the studio makes a huge difference. I think it's a time-saving or a money-saving thing. Mm-hmm. It could be that the actors can't all come together because they have conflicts. It also, when you have everybody in the studio, it does take longer because you're interacting, you're laughing, you goof a line, everybody plays off of it, but you have to it's like herding cats, I say, or like, I always say voiceover acting, at least at that time, was like your parents dropped you off at the playground and there's a huge sandbox. And your parents say, okay, you can get in the sandbox, but don't you get dirty and don't you throw any sand. And the minute the parents leave, that's all you're doing is rolling around in the sand and throwing it. And that was kind of like what it was. It was a creative experience that really added to the value of the voiceover, which really brought the life to the character. Animation these days is just so flat. It's line drawing and colored pencils, It's not like the Disney animation. Or, look at the Pinocchios and look at the Snow White and look at Sleeping Beauty and look at the rich... Well, Sleeping Beauty actually was already going into that more stilted. But look at the early magnificent animated movies that Disney did. Look at the way they treat water and the characters and the expressions. They're like art. Animation today is, get it done quick. But it's the voice that brings it to life.
Could you describe what the recording process is like when recording an animation character? Are you ever allowed to record from the comforts of a home studio?
That's a good question. Now, I think I addressed a lot of that in the last question about what it was like in the studio and what that process was. Many jobs now are from a home studio. It saves money, it saves time. A lot of auditions are from a home studio these days. We used to go either to a professional studio or we used to go to our agent's office and they would have a booth. And, now when you do it in your own studio, you're directing yourself. It's just different. It's just different.
But isn't there also, some scripts that can't be away from the studio that you are recording in when you do get hired for a role or an audition?
Well, it just depends on what the producer and director want. So in my opinion, I think every show should be recorded as a cast together. I think it lifts it off the page better. It really is a matter of dollars and cents more than the creativity. If a director has enough cachet and can say, I want these people in studio, then I think it makes for a better outcome. So in my opinion, which is just my opinion, I would prefer that everybody be there and we all record together, because it's certainly a lot more fun.
It really is a lot more fun with other people. Are there any struggles and or challenges of being a voice actor, and what actions would you recommend overcoming them?
Well, there's advantages of being a voiceover actor. You can basically show up with greasy hair, no makeup, and a pair of leggings, I guess, if you wanted to. So it's your voice. Because it's your voice, you really have to embody the character from the bottom of your soul to the top of your head. You have to create a life for that character and a backstory for that character, and you have to come in already walking through the door or walking into your studio with all filled up with the different facets of what you'd like to bring to that character. The director may take you in a different direction. You have to be willing, and you have to be able to bob and weave through, try it this way, try it that way. This is where I want you to go with her. This is the way I want you to go. And many times you can talk to the director in advance and, discuss the genesis of the character. You don't just walk in as an empty shell and start creating on point. You have to come in ready to go with as many facets to that character and be willing to add more based on what they're telling you. Those are challenges, but, I always talk about voiceover acting. What do you need to do to be a voiceover actor? I have so many people come in, oh, I do this voice. It's really great, this voice. It's like, oh, yeah, that's one great voice. Do you do any others? No, this is my voice, and everybody says I should use it, and it's really good. And, okay, you have one nice voice. Okay, great. But how do you compete with those people who are coming in with 52 great voices? You can't. So I tell people voiceover acting is like walking in the door with a pack of playing cards. And each card has a character. It's full. You've completely flushed that out, and you've got a name for that character, where they live, where they grew up, how old are they, what region of the world are they from. And then sometimes you can pull one character out of the deck. Or sometimes you have to pull the 80-year-old woman with no teeth who grew up in the South. Well, that's a different lady. And you pull the different facets or the different cards out of the deck, and then you make a hand with them, right? Sometimes you get dealt a perfect hand. Well, that's the one card who, her name is Sally, and she's 2 years old, and you know Sally like the back of your hand. Or sometimes you have to put a hand together in order to win the game. You must come with a deck of cards and be really able to pull from each card and create that new character. And that's what everybody I know does, And some people start with impressions. But you can't make a living doing impressions. You have to take the impression and put layers on top of them to make other characters. You can't just steal someone else's voice. If you do a great Winnie the Pooh, you can't steal Jim Cummings' voice. But you could do Winnie the Pooh who's wearing a Tigger costume, who's Raphael, and, you can bring different aspects of the characters to create other ones. But you can't do one voice, and you have to be ready, and you have to take classes. One of there's so many of my favorite people, but Rob Paulson is offering courses right now. He has a magnificent book that he's written, an autobiography called Voice Lessons, which I recommend everybody to read. He's just a giant. Michael Bell teaches. He's a giant. Sue Blue has written books and is giving great advice. There's so many amazing assets on the Internet now that you've got much more opportunity than we ever did. We had to kind of find our own way. It's a lot easier now for people to get educated and figure out how to do things. So use all of those. And you have the ability to record your voices rather than write them down on pieces of paper and put them in your back pocket. You can make files and record those voices that you've come up with and perfect them. I say probably doing voiceover now has many more opportunities than when I was doing it in the beginning. You had to have an agent then. You had to be able to go to a recording studio. There were a lot of obstacles. And even though it's much more maybe much more competitive now because now everybody can do it, you have the opportunity to get your foot in the door a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you were saying, just you can do impressions, but just add layers to them. You
cannot steal someone else's work.
Yeah. My coach, he would always say, I don't want a British lady who lunches. I want somebody who is, your natural voice is amazing. You can still do those impressions, but add layers to them.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was saying. And there may be a British lady who lunches in your lifetime. Nobody says you can't have a British lady that lunches. You just have to, she's got to be real. She's got to be drinking the tea and eating the crumpets.
Yeah. Do you follow personal guidelines before recording? For example, like not recording after eating to reduce stomach noise, etc. And what do you do to avoid mouth-popping noises?
Well, first of all, there's a shield that goes in front of the microphone to help, the syllabate, the pops and the T's and all of that. You do need to practice with your microphone technique. These are all part of the trade, too. That's part of it. I try not to have dairy products before I'm about to record, anything that's going to make you, your sinuses fill up or phlegm. And you also want to warm your voice up before you start, too. I come from a music background. I have a degree in vocal performance in opera, and I have a 3.5 octave vocal range. And you want to be able to warm up. And warm up your, you want to do different kinds of lip warm-ups and that kind of thing after a cup of coffee. Yeah, just like, voiceover is like an athletic experience. So you don't just walk in cold and start talking. You got to get the blood flowing, you got to get your mouth moving, you got to get your, make sure your teeth aren't dry and your lips don't stick to your teeth. And, you got to walk in ready. And that's warming up, just like you would if you're going to run a marathon.
That's exactly true. And also, the advice you gave is wonderful.
Thank you.
What advice can you give those who want to become a successful voiceover artist like me and yourself?
You have to really study. You have to work at it. This is not just something you just say, I can do that, and then expect to be professional. Or I get all the time people saying to me, I've always wanted to do voiceover. Well, I'm 4'10". I've always wanted to be 5'7" and skinny. Sometimes it's not going to be possible, okay? And you may do this for fun, and that can be okay. You can be creative. You can write your own scripts. You can do your own podcasts. You can do your own animated shows. You've got so many possibilities. You may never become a professional at this, but if you work really hard at it and you study and you really do the work, just like I said, if you're a marathon runner, you're not starting from zero and running 24 miles, okay? You will get hurt. You could, there's all kinds of perils. Now maybe you're lucky enough that you run the marathon. You may audition for the first job and you may get it and you may never stop working, okay? And I hope that's for everybody, but that's not realistic. So if you're serious, first of all, you've got to really want it, because acting in any of this, voiceover, on camera, theater, it's hard. You get told no more than you get told yes. You have to want it so badly that there's nothing else you want to do, okay? Otherwise, do it for a hobby, have fun, and find something else that you enjoy as well, because it's very hard to make a living at this. And I'm not the first person to say these things. But if you seriously want this, and this is your heart and your soul and your passion, then you work at it every day, and you dedicate the time, you put it in, you read all you can read, You practice all you can practice. You develop your characters, and you seek out any opportunity you can to do the work. And it doesn't have to be Disney. It can be local television spots, local radio spots. It could be any number of things, you know. Sometimes it's better to be a big fish in a little pond. And sometimes you're lucky and you get to be that big fish in a giant ocean. But I've been in the business a long time, and I always say that Broadway is where you're happy. And that's the bottom line, is you have to be happy. And you have to be proud of yourself and know you've done everything you can to get where you want to go. And then the journey is the journey. And sometimes it takes a left or right turn, and you had no idea you were going in that direction. I mean, you know how to make God laugh? Make a plan. So I say, you know, make the plans, but be open and receptive for wherever comes your way, and be prepared. Preparation, opportunity, that leads to the luck.
That is really great advice. Really great advice. Even I'm like, wow. Can you tell us what projects are you currently working on?
Well, in terms of voiceover projects, there isn't anything at the moment that's going on for me. All of the Comic-Cons have basically been canceled at this point. And hopefully next year we'll be able to all get back again. We were all going to be together in Orlando for Fanboy. There were a lot of plans in the works for all of us to be together. We may be doing something virtual. That's kind of on the front burner. But I would say that, you know, there's many aspects to life. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the work that I've done in the charity world. I'm a firm believer in education. Education is something no one can ever take away from you. No matter what happens, it'll always be with you. So I am a huge supporter of a major university in Jerusalem, in Israel, called the Hebrew University. It's world-renowned, world-class, from everything from cancer research to nanotechnology to archaeology and music and theater. And right now they are working night and day, round the clock, on this COVID-19 issue, in addition to the viruses that will be coming in the future. And I have, along with a lot of other people, raised millions of dollars for scholarship funds for students. So a lot of times people request an autographed picture. And whenever I get a request via instant messenger, I will ask the person to make a contribution to the American Friends of the Hebrew University, which is afhu.org. And that's my small way in making this world a better place. It's in the Middle East, and Jews, Christians, and Muslims study there together in peace, and people come from countries all over the world to study at this university. And it's my small way of trying to make the world a better place. So that's my big project right now. We're raising money for student scholarships who are specifically working in labs to fight COVID-19, and they're coming up with some amazing breakthroughs. And I know on their website, afhu.org, there's a lot of information on it. So we're very lucky as voiceover actors or actors. We have a forum, we have a way to inspire people to help others. I know that we've done work for Operation Smile in the past, which helps restore children who have had cleft palate damage, you know, when they were born with a cleft palate. We've done donations for the soldiers who've come back from Afghanistan, and, you know, those are all really important to help people. And I think the Turtles have done just that as well. A lot of times we'll hear from people returning from military service, many of them with tattoos of the Ninja Turtles on their arms. And of course April O'Neil is always their first girlfriend. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be part of this amazing journey, and lucky enough to continue to be asked to help out and for my autograph, and it's really lovely. Really lovely.
That's really amazing. Like you said, Comic-Cons and stuff like that. And contributes charity work and stuff like that, that's always been a thing for me, because being a person with an illness and stuff like that, I've always wanted to give back to what I have, and especially others across the way, from the whole entire frame of illness life, because it's a good thing and it's something I want to do when I get up there. So,
and I would like to think that most people feel that way too. You know, I have great confidence in people, and I try and always look on the bright side. And I think most people who go into voiceover are generous and kind and giving and supportive of each other. And you'll see at the Comic-Cons when we do the panels, all of the actors are so appreciative and so giving to the audience and their fans. We never went into this thinking we'd be famous. Who would think that, you know, doing the voice of a character behind an animated series, anybody would recognize who we were. I remember when Turtles came out, and it was so popular that every child had a T-shirt or tennis shoes or shorts, a hat. Everything was Ninja Turtles. Even in Disneyland, I'd go with our kids to Disneyland, and they weren't wearing Mickey Mouse T-shirts. They were wearing Leonardo T-shirts. And I realized that if it had been my face and not my voice, I probably wouldn't have been able to go out in public. That's how famous the Turtles became. So we're all very appreciative of the accolades and you guys wanting to talk with us and ask us questions, and it goes both ways. It goes both ways. We love you guys. We really do.
How does an inspiring voiceover artist such as myself land their one union-rated job to become SAG-AFTRA without being in the union yet?
Yes, that is the catch-22 question of the day. That question existed when I started in the business, and it continues. And I don't know that anybody has a tried and true answer. You just have to keep auditioning. There's so much more non-union work out there now than there was when I was starting out. You may find that you can work more and get paid for it as a non-union actor. Once you join the union, then you may have complications getting jobs that are non-union. So, you have to decide, is there a catch-22 to this? Or, do you really want to be in the union and pay the dues? Or do you not want to be in the union? If you want to be in the union, then you have to find a way to audition for that union job. And if you land it, you'll be in the union. All they have to do is what's called a Taft-Hartley. They, sign a letter saying, this is the one, the only one, and this is the one we want. I remember when I wanted to become an equity member, which is for theater. Again, how do you get in the union? You got to get a job. Well, how do I get a job if I'm not in the union? So I started out working backstage, cleaning toilets, ironing underwear for actors, anything I could do with the promise of the producers saying, if you do this for this amount of time, then we'll write that letter for you to get in the union. And that's how I finally got in that union. So you just have to, look on the internet, ask the question, and decide if you really want to get in the union. You're just going to have to make it happen. You make it happen.
That's really true. And in closing, this is kind of like a fun question. Do you have any questions for me as an up-and-coming voiceover artist?
That's a good question. What are you doing to prepare yourself for that luck meeting preparation and opportunity?
For me, it's just very easy to go into different voices and stuff like that and slowly come out of them. And to be honest, I've had a really hard time with popping noises, my S's. I make my S's very strong, and just the stomach. It's the big things.
The stomach.
The stomach growling.
Oh my goodness, you're going to have to do stomach exercises. I think you should consult with the stomach doctor. Find out how you stop the stomach noises. Yeah. You're young. You'll deal with the stomach thing. you know.
Mm-hmm.
You just keep working on it, you know, keep practicing. If the S is a problem for you, then you have to devote a certain amount of time every day and listen back and maybe use some different filters over the microphone or look in the mirror and take a look at how you're using your lips, your tongue, and see if you can change the way you're doing that in order to create a softer sound. It's just trial and error. But you can record yourself as well with video and take a look at, oh my goodness, I see my tongue is, touching my ear when I say the word, goofball or something. I got to get my tongue out of my ear. These are all things that a coach can help you with, or you can work on yourself. And you just have to put in the time. You have to get in the pool, you got to do the laps in order to win the race. And that's what you've got to do. So I don't know if anybody is interested in following me, but I'm happy to give out my Facebook and Instagram if you like.
Yes, that's actually the next question of where can listeners find your website?
Yeah,
or you?
I read your mind. I'm so excited. So Facebook is really easy. It's my name, Renae Jacobs, Jacobs, and you just have to friend request me. I am trying very hard to make sure I don't click on somebody who's not a real person. So if you've got some wacky kind of picture, I may not friend you. Please forgive me, but I've had some weird experiences. So I'm trying to be very careful filtering that, okay? And then my Instagram is Renae, Renae _L, like as in leap, _Jacobs. Jacobs. So Renae _L _Jacobs, and you'll find me. And I post from time to time. Yeah, that's where you find me.
I will definitely follow you and add you on Facebook, if that's okay.
Of course. And then follow my favorite charity, afhu.org, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Woohoo!
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Voicing Your Talent. With me, Jacquelyn Liz. Stay tuned for more thrilling interviews from the giants in our crazy industry we call voice acting.
Cut. That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Voicing Your Talent with Jacquelyn Liz. Voicing Your Talent is part of the Theme Parkology Network. Interviews were arranged by and for Theme Parkology. Voicing Your Talent is strictly a fan publication. Please visit us at themeparkology.com for more information. Follow Jacquelyn Liz on Facebook.com/blessedwithavoice and Instagram.com/voicingyourtalent. All character voices, trademarks, product names, company names, and logos mentioned are the property of their respective owners. All opinions stated within do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Theme Parkology or any other production company. Don't forget to subscribe to Voicing Your Talent on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll get a notification as soon as our latest episode drops. While you're at it, please rate us with a 5-star review. This will help other fans find our show. Just like Jacquelyn says, we are all blessed with a voice.